Hello, everybody. It's Andreas and Hannah again from IBM. We would like to actually share some information on the French tech visa. And a very interesting category, and it's actually not just one category. You will hear later it's actually a name for three different categories of visas. France, or Paris in particular, tries to establish themselves as really an IT hub, or not tries, they are establishing themselves as an IT hub. And actually the immigration system has accommodated that change tremendously well. And we just thought it might be really interesting to share that with you, with the viewers out there, how the French tech visa works and what are the requirements. So Hannah, the first question is really what I already kind of showed in my introduction. The French tech visa is not one visa, right? I mean, there are three different categories. So maybe you can just give us the three different categories, and then I will follow up with a couple of questions for each category.
Yes, no, thank you. So exactly, the three categories of the French tech visa are firstly for employees who are employed by a company that's recognized for its innovative nature and they earn a minimum salary. Secondly, startup founders, and they need to show that their startup is of this equally innovative nature. And lastly, for investors who have a minimum investment amount and commit to create or protect jobs. That's the three categories.
Okay, so employee, startup, and investor, right? So these are the ones. So let us start with the employee. Okay, so you said obviously in your introduction, there were, if I listened correctly, there were really two main requirements. The one was you need to work for a recognized employer. So maybe you could just explain that a little bit, what it really means. Then the second keyword you used was obviously minimum salary. So we know in the European Union, the blue card, for instance, they work with minimum salaries. So maybe just explain that a little bit. And then the third one I'm interested in is really the skills requirements, or the requirements, the hurdles the individual has to meet to get the visa. Okay, so these three, if you could just talk about that in that order, that would be fantastic.
So as you're saying, the key element really is this recognition of the company as a French tech innovative company. And that's the first step in the process, and that is done by the body or organization called La French Tech, who are really driving all these three categories and this, reaction to becoming an IT hub. And there are various indicators used, so it's not just a straightforward this or that. There's various indicators such as receiving funding or being part of an accelerator. And if a mixture of one of these criteria can be shown, then the company can go through an online process of being recognized as an innovative company. So that's that side. Then the minimum salary is about 37,000 euros. Okay. So, which is also obviously interesting to know. So if it's also a good salary that you would be earning and with a good living standard in France. And lastly, the qualifications are actually quite liberal and a very low threshold. So okay. The visa was really created around the innovative nature of a company and the project and the work they do. And as such, there's no requirement of holding a specific formal or recognized qualification. It's really about the employer deciding that your skill set is something that they need.
Well, that's an interesting one. If you think about South Africa, where you have to prove to ITPSA your requirements, etc., etc. France, completely different. If the employer wants the foreigner, we trust the decision making of the employer, so you're kind of in. So if I summarize it, basically, any young South African, they need to find a job at a recognized employer, right? I mean, that's important. Then they need to earn the minimum salary, but obviously if they have skills, they will be paid accordingly. So, and that's it, really. I mean, that's really the challenge. Is there any requirement regarding language skills? I mean, from an immigration perspective?
No, not at all. As most of the industry, or a lot of the industry, is going into English speaking as a language to attract global talent anyways, there's no requirement set for the visa of being able to speak any level of French.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so that's super useful. Okay, so that's employees. Okay, now let's move over to the startups, right? So that's the second category of French tech visa. So tell us a little bit about the startup. What does it mean? Is there a minimum investment requirement? How does it get evaluated? Who evaluates it? These are typical the questions obviously startups will ask.
So for the startup founders, the key and important issue is really the innovative nature of the project, of the startup company, and being recognized. As such, there's no minimum amount that needs to be invested, but obviously the startup founder needs to show financial resources to support themselves, which is just under 20,000 euros per year. And then they have to undergo the selection process of the French tech or a partner and to be recognized as innovative. But that's really the basic requirements for that visa.
Okay, so again, the hurdle is really to be recognized as innovative, and that's pretty much it, right? I mean, that's really it.
Yes. No, yes, that is really the important part.
Is there? Do you know if there's a minimum? I mean, do you need to employ, let's say, within 2 years, 5 French nationals? Is there any criteria around that?
For the startup founder, not specifically.
Okay, all right. So again, it's very liberal. Basically, they just want to get a great idea into France and see if they can scale it or not, right? I mean, that's really the essence. Okay. All right.
Yes,
moving on to the last category, the investor, right? So investor typically requires an amount of investment. And then the second question I always get asked, can the investor then work in the company or not, or is it just purely investing? So maybe you could just explain a little bit around the investor visa.
So the minimum amount for investment, which is obviously the important question, so let's get it out there, is 300,000 euros.
Okay.
So that's the minimum amount. And then also, interestingly, we just had it with the startup founders, the investor does need to show creation or protection of jobs within 4 years of making that investment. So
okay.
There's a difference there, and that's important. So that is focused more on job creation, but there's no specific amount of jobs or people that need to be employed. It's about creating or protecting any jobs.
Okay.
And the investor permit is also a work permit and will allow to work for that company alone.
Okay, but that makes sense. I mean, if you're investing 300,000 euros, you don't really want to work then as an employee for another company. I mean, that makes no sense. So it makes perfect sense. So maybe the last question from my side, families, right? Accompanying families, children, spouses, life partners, etc. Obviously, the investor might not go alone, and the employee might not go alone. How does it work when it comes to the tech or the tech visa itself, or this category?
So the families really won the lottery in terms of French immigration. So because the tech visas are part of the overarching category of the so-called talent passport, family members are also eligible for a talent passport. And this visa category allows them to reside in France. It's a 4-year permit, same as the permit that the main applicant will receive. And it allows them to take up any employment in France with any employer, not limited to the tech scene. Yes, so that's really a very flexible category and very beneficial for family members.
All right, so the wife or the husband, whoever is the accompanying spouse, can actually work. I mean,
yes, definitely.
That's very liberal. I mean, we try to convince the South African government since quite a long time that spouses of critical skills holders at least can work in South Africa because the European Union is standard. But that's interesting. I mean, that's super good to know. Yeah, I mean, actually, this concludes my question and answers for today on the French tech visa. So 3 categories, 3 very interesting categories, quite low thresholds. So again, France is really open for immigrants and offers a lot of variety. I hope you had fun and listening to us. And if you have any questions, please contact us, either Hannah or myself, or just over the web. We look forward to answering your queries. And thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you.